Lauren Murphy, and this is Vanessa Moore. We are both students here at Adams State. We are studying English. Both of us plan to teach in the near future. We graduate in May, so fingers crossed for some jobs. So what we did is a service learning project, which will prepare us for our own teaching in the future. We understand and recognize that when students are passionate about what they're learning about, they put more effort into it, they want to expand on it, which is exactly what happened with us. So what we did is created a domestic violence awareness campaign here on Adams State campus. We created an interactive presentation that we took to 6 different classes, mainly freshman English classes. We gave 50-minute presentations. The whole thing was interactive, so they were giving us answers. We were basically just asking questions and guiding their thinking. We did this in the fall semester. And then on October 26th, we dedicated that day to our red flag campaign. So what a red flag is either like a warning sign about a potentially dangerous relationship or already a dangerous relationship. Students were able to write on we made like actual red flags, and then they would come up to our stand and they would write what they thought was a red flag, or they would put a quote on there, something motivational. They could write their own personal stories, and then we strung them all together and hung them throughout campus. And we had over 200 kids, students, staff, faculty. We had the athletic director, the vice president, they all participated. So why this topic is important is that 42% of college students have reported domestic violence during their 4 years at a university. That statistic is from the University of Michigan. So why this topic was important to us, this picture was taken 2 years ago. It's obviously of me. I was involved in a domestic violence relationship for a while. I had missed classes, countless excuses, pounds of makeup, 2 years of falling down stairs or sports injuries, frantic 911 calls, and broken bones. This picture was right after my ex-boyfriend had been arrested for the final time. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison, but then was released after three weeks. So Vanessa also is passionate about this because she's also a domestic violence survivor.
The same situation. I was in a domestic violence situation for 2.5 years. I lived with my ex-boyfriend. I was pushed off cliffs. I had fractured ribs from being kicked. I was afraid to leave the home I lived in with him. Again, I was a student at the time, so it was excuses, it was missing classes, it was failing classes and not being able to explain why. And it really took everything in me to be able to safely walk away from that situation. And when I left the final time, I remember expressing to everyone that I loved that I would make it a point to speak to young women and young men about domestic violence and I was very passionate about it, and spread the word about awareness and let people know that this can happen to anyone. It's not just those people who are weak or anything else. It can really happen to anyone.
So we both kind of collaborated, and then we went to Professor Chavez in our secondary teaching methods of teaching English class, and we told her that we wanted to do something together to raise awareness for this cause. And I thought it was important just to show this picture to show that these problems are on ASU's campus. My former boyfriend was also an athlete here at Adams State. We met at Adams State, and I'm not the only one at Adams State who has this kind of story. So this is the presentation that we showed to our classes that we presented to. It's not going to be obviously exactly what we did because I'm not going to ask you guys to interact with us about it, but we'll just kind of go through it so you can see what we did. We called our project 20 to None because every minute 20 people experience domestic violence, every minute. So we wanted to make it 20 to none. So first we go over what is domestic violence. We give them the definition so that they understand. We have a platform of exactly what we're talking about. So a pattern or cycle of behaviors used to create power and control over another. Then we go into types of abuse. So this is the part where I ask them, what do you think physical abuse is? And they'll throw out to me, hitting, kicking, throwing objects, spitting, reckless driving, threats, animal abuse, false imprisonment. This is important for students to understand because 1 in 3 college students report physical assault on campus. It's a huge number. Then we go into, sexual. 1 in 4 college students experience sexual abuse, 90% of them knowing their attacker. So since we are on such a confined area, we all know each other, especially at Adams State. It's a small campus, small community. We all know each other. Here they throw out, rape, sexting, forcing someone to watch porn, catcalling, unwanted touching, any of those things. We kind of talk about them, go through them. Students had a lot of questions about a lot of these different things. Well, what if this happens, and what is this, and what if this happens, and is this wrong? So this is kind of where we had them talk out what they thought it was. And then we go into emotional, which is 74% of students report emotional abuse on college campus, and 12% of those report suicidal thoughts because of it. So also it's 2 huge issues together. So we have emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and then suicide can tie into it. We talk about how all of these tie into each other. So if you're being physically abused, you're most likely being emotionally abused as well. If you're being emotionally abused, you could be sexually abused as well. They all tie into each other, and we want everybody to understand that we're not just talking about women, we're talking about men too. That this is an equal playing field, that men and women both experience domestic violence. So then we get into the cycle of abuse. We have them talk where they think that a relationship begins. So we say, usually begins right here. We talk about how, or begins right here. So their abuse occurs, their self-esteem will drop. We get into excuses, the honeymoon phase, where everything seems okay and we're happy, and the I'm sorry's and the flowers and the candy. We fall back into her routine, the tension is building, something happens, and bam, the abuse happens again. We talk about the more that this time goes around and around and around, the quicker it's going to begin to happen. So this could go in one entire year, and then if it continues, it's going to happen in months, days, daily, which we talk about that this can end fatally. So, and it's important for students to understand that. We talk about why people stay. As a survivor myself, I would think before getting out, no one's going to believe me. And this was a huge fear of mine personally. I'm an athlete here at Adams State, and we have this stigma, and oh no, she's lying, he wouldn't do that. Everyone knows each other. So this was a huge fear of mine. I think it's important for students to understand why people stay so that they're not victimized. These are some that Vanessa and I just threw together, but we talk about on campus, again, stigmas. People won't believe us. They have families. They're worried about their family taking them out of school. They don't define their experience as abuse, so they don't understand that what they're in is actually abusive. Students throw out their own to us. We got lots of different ones that we never even thought about either. So it's important for also if you're helping a friend to understand why someone might be staying so that you aren't putting blame on them. Then we talked about setting boundaries. So we kind of go into this realm about how do we create healthy relationships. So we recognize domestic violence. How do we create healthy relationships now? We talk about setting boundaries as what you're comfortable with, what your partner is comfortable with, how to communicate that to each other in a healthy way so that we can avoid domestic violence. Again, these are just some things that we threw out. Drugs and alcohol, social media, PDA, language, your friends, texting, those kinds of things. And again, they threw out a whole bunch that we didn't even think about either. So I think this is important for students to understand as well.
Some of the things that we got to were kind of alarming. So it really was a little bit of a wake-up call as to what students don't understand might be boundaries as well. People tended to be very open with us, and like I said, it was kind of alarming some of the things that we heard during this as well.
We give tips for breaking up. So if you are thinking about breaking up with an abusive partner, how to do that. This is something that I sure enough wasn't taught and had no idea. I knew that I was in an abusive relationship, but how do I leave, and how do I leave safely? So we just gave some tips that we thought were important. So don't explain yourself more than once. If they don't understand it the first time, they're not going to understand it. You're just gonna upset them more. Do it in a public place. Let people know that you're going there. Let your family know that you're going there. Trusting yourself. If it doesn't feel right, it's most likely not right. And again, they threw out lots of questions about this. And again, like Vanessa said, it was very alarming that, and it shows that this is a prevalent issue on Adams State's campus. So then we talked about this. Again, we didn't put our own opinions out there. We just wanted to have their feedback. So can an abuser change? And why do people abuse? So we're understanding both sides. As hard as that is to accept, I think it's important that we look at both sides and both perspectives. They threw out a lot of things. Some people thought, no, abusers don't change. Some people said, yeah, people can change, and how do they change, and why do they change? It's just a topic for discussion. We don't have an answer to that, but this is the whole idea of breaking silence, is just bringing up these tough topics for them to understand and to be thinking about. And then we said how to help a friend. So I know a lot of my friends, I'm sure, knew that I was in an abusive relationship, and I'm sure Vanessa can say the same. But how do you help a friend? That's a really hard thing to do, and sometimes we feel like we are overstepping our boundaries with friends as well. So we just gave a couple things that we thought. So our biggest one was listen and believe. So even if you actually don't believe, don't tell them that you don't believe them, because they're never going to go to someone ever again. Support them, talk to a trusted adult, never abandon your friend, and give resources. So we gave students a website, loveisrespect.org, which had a ton of different resources and advice from actual professional counselors that they could use. We gave them the domestic violence awareness hotline number. It's 24/7. They could call at any time and get help. We gave them lots of different websites, phone numbers, things that they can do. We also handed out these bracelets we had made. It says violence can end, break the silence. I see students still walking around campus with these bracelets on, which is really awesome to see. Purple is the domestic violence awareness color, and October is the domestic violence awareness month. So we did all of this mainly in October, November. Our red flag day was in October, so that was important. Next we're just gonna show oh yeah, go ahead.
Something that we did as well at the end of these presentations when we were in every classroom is we had the students write down as we were going along on a piece of paper and anonymously, or they could write their names, write things down, and then turn them into us. And again, we got some really positive feedback, and we also saw some things that were kind of alarming and made us realize how important this actually is. You know, we came into this passionately and we understood how important this was, but seeing those responses, you know, we're getting like 15, 20 responses per class, 6 classes. You know, a lot of those were things like, I didn't realize this was an abusive relationship. I didn't realize that this could turn into abuse. I didn't understand what a red flag was, or this was really helpful. I know one of my friends is in this situation. I had a girl come up to me in Walmart and say, you talked in my class, and I'm in an abusive relationship, and I'm finally gonna go seek help. And so this is huge. This is our turnout was much more than we expected, and also it's really made it even more prevalent to us how important this really is, how important this topic is, especially on college campuses.
We intended to take this to some high schools, some middle schools, talk to younger kids about this, because we also believe that these issues do need to be talked about at a young age. Once we get to college, not saying it's too late, but once we get to college, we're on our own. We don't have a whole lot of guidance here, and we want to incorporate these values about healthy relationships early on so that we can prevent it at our age now. We're going to show a slideshow about just our red flag campaign. It's a 3-minute slideshow real quick, just to kind of show you what happened on campus. Again, we had students, they were given a piece of paper, it was just a red triangle. They would write on it, we stapled it all together and hung it around. There's a couple pictures of what people said on there. Yeah. on there. They wrote, I mean, some people took 3 flags and wrote their entire story that they had been in a domestic violence relationship. Some people said, stop saying boys will be boys. Some said lots of different comments that involved lots of different kinds of domestic violence. Some people said, today I woke up and I didn't feel alone today because of what we were doing. So we've heard lots of different people come up to us and say, hey, you guys are the girls from this, and tell us their stories. Kids went to Professor Chavez and changed their entire research project to research more about domestic violence and become more aware about these topics. So we plan on expanding our project and hopefully taking it to other college campuses and other schools around the San Luis Valley and Colorado. Do you guys have any questions?
Nice work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So you mostly talked about what victims can do to improve their situation, get out of the problems. Are there things that the university could do or the community could do to reduce the incidence of this, or make it easier for people who want to get out of these relationships? Or is it all up to the victim?
I think it starts with just being aware, and I think people are nervous about talking about these kinds of difficult topics, and we avoid them and we go around them, and I think it's important for us to feel comfortable talking about these kinds of things and being aware. Like we talked about earlier, that a lot of people don't know that they're even in a domestic violence relationship, so it's about educating college students, educating high school students before they go to college with this kind of stuff. So I think that the university could make it more comfortable to talk about these things and have more resources. I know we have resources on campus for victims or for people who are searching help, but I don't think that they are very obvious or that they are displayed as much as they could be. Do you have an opinion?
Yeah, I think that awareness is key, and also making resources that are available a little more visible. I know that there's a lot about sexual assault and stuff. You see the consent posters that have kind of popped up this last semester. Maybe more things like that, or even like a presentation where you play out scenarios that people are seeing them, whether that be emotional, physical, or like a sexual assault scenario. So students see those in their face, and they, like I said, just raising that awareness and keeping that going and keeping the conversation going among students themselves.
I feel like we want to act like these things aren't happening because they are so awful, but we can't pretend that these things aren't happening. These things are happening on our own campus, and it's important to recognize that and take initiative to change something. Anybody else? Yeah.
I guess. So you two are both athletes?
I am.
No, I'm not an athlete.
Oh, okay. So one athlete. Do you think this is a more common problem in the athletic community, or just a coincidence?
I think it's hard to say because I don't know other people's personal experience, but I felt that because my boyfriend was an athlete and I was an athlete, we were held at a higher standard, and we're told that all the time by our coaches, you guys are at a higher standard on this campus, and you guys need to be, the role models. And so when such an awful thing happens, it's a little bit hard to come out about it. And he was a little bit elevated, and so I didn't think people would believe me because of that. And even when these things were going on, he still was playing games, and he still was on the team, and he still was doing all of these things, which is hard. All right, thank you.